Incredible.
Yes. Oh my god. So Hakim, like, maybe you figured it out, or maybe you haven't. That's Joseph. Like,
Yeah.
that's his real life persona just into the game. It's really funny that so another voice actor did the voice in the final. But we had Joseph for the longest time as both the audio and the mocap.
Oh my
Game is actually mocap. I can't tell you how many like hip thrusts have been like painfully reduced by the animators, because it's just Joseph. You're listening to Rules of Play, a game development podcast for anyone wanting industry insight, deep dives on games, and casual conversation.
Hello and welcome to Rules of Play. Today we have something very exciting. We have a beautiful guest. Please welcome Oliver Granlund. Oliver is a senior level and game designer at Hazel. He's worked on a number of really exciting projects in his career, some Battlefront 2, Battlefront 5, and most recently, I'll make a prediction, Game of the Year, It Takes Two. And so welcome to Rules of Play. Here we are.
Thank you.
So normally on the start of this, we do a bit of a roundtable of checking what people have been up to recently, what they've been playing. So as you're the guest, Oliver, I'll pass it to you. What have you been playing recently?
Oh, what have I been playing? Oh, that's a great question, actually. Oh man, my memory is so bad when it comes to this. The weeks just kind of blur. I've actually been playing this game called Phantom Abyss. It's a very interesting game. It's like a roguelike, but it's first person and kind of like mirror's edge movement. You're like a Indiana Jones style kind of character going through this like randomly generated Mayan dungeon. But the quirk of it is that a dungeon can only be completed once, and it's like this online meta space where if you die, that dungeon is like persistent. So you'll appear as a ghost, kind of guiding the other players. And once the dungeon is completed, like all their souls and money will be released back to the players. It's a very interesting game.
Yeah. I got a free copy of it off something. There was some magazine was running some kind of promotion. I got it for free, and it's really, really compelling. Like I put like maybe like 5 hours into it on my first sitting, just like, oh my god! And the whip's so satisfying to use, and it's getting around, and yeah, it's a really, because at first I thought it was like a battle royale. At first I thought like everyone was live players, but it's past players like their like Spirit Trail, right? But yeah, it's good. It's good.
Oh, that's cool. I also thought it was like not quite like Fall Guys, where it's everyone trying to get to some point. But I also thought it was like you go into a lobby of 20 people rather than like it's literally everyone who's ever played that level.
Mm-hmm.
And they've got their groups there. That's cool. I've basically I've finished Deathloop. That's what I did the end of last week and this week.
Congratulations.
So that was my goal, basically.
I also finished Deathloop. This is what I mean with not remembering.
And outside of that, I haven't really played much outside of that. I've basically been waiting to play Kenna. That's like my next game that I'm going to play. So I'm going to have a very obvious what have I been playing next week in the next episode.
We'll look forward to that one. I've been playing a fair bit of It Takes Two, funnily enough. But we probably don't need to get into that now because we'll probably end up talking about that later. But yeah, we're absolutely loving it so far. It's fantastic.
That's great. That's great.
And not just because we have you on, but that I actually genuinely enjoying it.
For reals, also.
Yeah, don't worry. Yeah, it's completely sincere. Yeah.
What about you, Ads?
So I finished Deathloop finally. I feel like I'm going to have to go and platinum that game because it is fantastic. So, Jack, invade me, please. Let me invade you so I can get one of the trophies.
Oh yeah, we should probably do that and exploit that just so we can get all those trophies.
Yeah, because I think there's only one. I think you got a Masquerader's Cult. I think that's literally the only one.
Okay. Cool.
So we'll do that.
Nice. Yeah. Well, yeah, I wrapped Deathloop as well. I think it was maybe even before we recorded the last episode. I think I was just wrapping it up. But other than that, I haven't been playing too much, but the second round of like the Halo Infinite previews being out, and it's classic me. I've just been smashing that. Even the fact that the multiplayer servers aren't on, like you can just play against bots in like a training mode. It never ends. I'm just playing it, and like I've put like 40 minutes into it. Like, Jack, there's no end goal to this. But stop playing it. I'm like, can't. So I've just been practicing using the grappling hook and all the other weird, cool little mechanics that they put in the game. And fingers crossed, come December, that we get an amazing Halo game. But yeah, that's kind of been me at the minute.
I've been seeing on Twitter a load of the trick shots and things that people have been doing with the different like mechanics and grappling hooks and things. It's pretty mad.
Well, I sent you that stuff, didn't I? When they put like this piece of equipment in, and is it a grenade? Yeah, it's like a grenade, and it arcs lightning like electric. And now I don't know why they put it in, but you can now like drop weapons for teammates, kind of like in like a battle royale if you want to swap weapons. And these people got together and they started dropping like loads of weapons in a row, put like a lightning grenade near the start of it, and it proper like chain all the way through it, like proper like in like Breath of the Wild and stuff. It's like,
that's cool.
Is Halo secretly an immersive sim? Like, there's something going on here. So yeah, I'm very excited to see what people do in the campaign. Like come December, I'm sure people will find ways to exploit like half of the campaign somehow by doing shit like that. So.
I think you're just trying to make more games immersive sims, Jack. That's all it is.
Yeah. Praise them for being immersive sims, so they're like, more.
Yeah.
Cool. But that's us. That's us all gamed out, I think.
Those are games. So yeah, normally with our guest episodes, we try and dig in a bit into sort of how you got into games and what made you want to get into the design role, or what. That was a good sentence. What made you want to get into the design role and how you got there? So, take it away. Where did you start, basically? What was your journey for games?
Yeah. So my journey actually started when I was very young, which I guess I'm kind of a first generation of this, but my father grew up very much as like a competitive player in Counter-Strike.
Wow.
And he played for like basically the professional teams, but it was before like CS was big, right? It was 1.6 before there were any like big prize pools. Like he won a pack of beers, like that sort of stuff. But, the professional teams at the time. So like through that, naturally, I just like went into games in terms of like my imagination, my free time, like all of that stuff. And I don't know really when it dawned on me that I could make games. But I think it was like when I got to pick my high school, I took like a programming course and went straight into C++, and I absolutely hated it. I always felt like, the code is a step to get to what I want. I know for some people that's like reverse, where it's like, oh, the endorphins, or like, I'm just sad until I get to that point where I can play with it. And that bounced me away into like, I really liked that part of building like levels and gameplay when I actually had that. So naturally I gravitated towards like doing more and more of that. And it started like this. Oh, actually, this painting is from high school when we made a game in. I guess you can't see it because of the resolution, but it is a 2D platformer inspired by like Limbo and all of those games.
Oh, nice.
That's so cool.
And it kind of naturally went from there. Then I went to I guess university, where I just pursued like level and game design, and ended up at DICE after an internship.
Nice. Yeah, I think we've had a couple of people with internships. I mean, it's so interesting to see that everyone gets a different way into it. Like, you were fairly exposed to how games could earn money, I guess, or earn beer. Whereas a lot of us, I think, were fairly not exposed to it at all. I mean, I didn't think about games until college, where like the first thing I did that was even close to a game was I made like an interactive Flash comic book. that was based on Naughty Bear. If anyone ever played that game.
Oh my god, really?
Oh yes.
Why have I never heard that story before?
It's one for another time, I guess. But
no,
yeah.
this is, I have to find this out.
There you go. There you go. Here we go.
So, yeah, we had it was like a where they fancify names. It was a film and photography course, but they called it lens-based media. And I was like, well, a computer's a lens, so I want to do something like gamey. So I made like a Flash interactive comic book, and then I played Naughty Bear when it came out, and I was like, this game's great. And I was like beating other people. No one ever played it. And I was like, I really love this game. Like obtuse violence and teddy bears. It's great. The whole idea is it's a comic book where one of the teddy bears in this spaceship gets invited to a party and the other one doesn't. And then as you go through it, you basically choose whether you go over to that other spaceship and kill them all. So there you go.
You describe yourself as a bit of a disturbed individual then, Matthew.
Yeah. Hey, I was 17, 18, you know.
I could definitely end up hearing that in court. That story.
Yeah. This call is going to play later.
Yeah.
You should see the panel. It's great stuff.
So when you did that then, Oliver, so did you? You kind of mentioned that you obviously kind of went through the route of was there any like around you growing up of like a college level? Because obviously like in England, normally you finish school, go like college, sixth form, then university. Did you know all the way through then it was like that's my kind of end goal, like I want to be a game designer, or was it something you figured out along the way, if that makes sense?
Yeah, so I always knew, or always like fairly early at least, I knew I wanted to work with games, but I wasn't sure what, right? And I guess it's one of those naive, like, oh, I like to play games, so I like to make games. It's generally very different. But after trying all the things, like I was a very creative person. I liked doing like different sort of, both science experiments and making up my own rules for like board games and whatnot. So it was kind of a natural transition. But I think the path to actually becoming, like, sure, it might seem very straightforward. It's definitely more straightforward than making a Naughty Bear comic and sliding it in that way. But I think the difference here is that I think game dev schools are now becoming kind of like solidified as an actual thing. I think the difference with the one that I went to, it's called Future Games in Stockholm, and there are a few of them that are, I think you call them vocational education in the UK, where they're actually made by the Swedish government more as like you want to be a carpenter or you want to be like an electrician. It's very practical work, so they're very light on the theoretical stuff. Like theoretical stuff is important to game dev, but making a bunch of games is probably going to get you further than reading a bunch of books.
100%.
So the whole idea behind those schools was just like, okay, we'll just lock a bunch of teenagers in a room and we tell them to make games, and we see what comes out. And it's been working great actually. Like if you look statistically, where I think especially in the States, game dev colleges are very unreliable in terms of hiring rates. But these vocational educations, they're not allowed to even exist if they don't have an 80% hiring rate. Then the government shuts them down. So it's like, and then of course, depending on what industry you look at, 80% might be kind of low. But compared to games industry, like if you get into that school and you have like, 4 in 5 chances of getting a job, that's really, really good.
That is really good.
It's definitely. That's
the UK scores are very skewed because their percentages on hiring doesn't mean hiring in the role that you were doing a degree in. So I think my course had like a 96% job after 2 years, but that just means I have a job.
Your little McDonald's uniform on, just
Hey, I was part of that statistic, and I worked in HMV. So
Hey, not wrong
your
with it, not
HMV
wrong with
uniform, and they're all the government's like, "Hey, well done, you did it! You did it! Look, you did it!" It's like, what? Yeah.
The government doesn't really understand, so they actually send you like a form where they ask, like, "Is this the correct industry? Is this the correct role?" You know, they're like, "We're not gonna."
Did you do it?
Did it work?
Oh man,
That's it's super interesting you say that, because the university that I went to was kind of similar, I guess, in more of a vocational side of it. It was called FutureWorks in Manchester. So it was not an actual like traditional university, but I got my degree from a university. But it was very much like that, where it was a lot smaller, like sort of college size, focused solely on the creative arts industry, so games industry, film, TV, and what have you. But one thing that they did really well there, and I don't know if it might be the same for you, Oliver, but they had people who were actually in the industry being the tutors. So I don't know, is that the kind of thing that they did there?
Yeah,
Did they do something
exactly.
similar, or was it? Yeah.
Exactly. We had, I think our head teacher, Shor De Jong. He's like he was also at the time an Epic Games evangelist, right? He's
That's awesome.
just going around to all basically all the companies and just like basically being Epic's communication with yeah, you've probably seen him around if you've watched any like talks about like Unreal Engine. Horensis is his other name he goes by. And, you know, he did that out of, you know, pure passion for Unreal Engine and you know, spreading the word. And also I guess the whole school has been skewed to Epic fanboys, so that's also a bonus.
that's the new hiring squad for Epic. They found it. Let's just
Exactly.
go there.
Exactly. But yeah, it was very much, you know, taking in teachers from the industry in general, just like both lecturers who could, you know, who could go in and say, you know, you should do this to get hired. You know, was very concrete. None of this like, you know, you go the entire like 4 years and then you get out and then you realize, oh, it's not enough. You know, they would come to you like in month 3 and say, okay, this is what you need to do. And I think that sort of guidance is really, you know, that's what makes a difference.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree with that completely.
T-side for us is a little different. We had industry lecturers, but because it was a full-blown university, I don't think we properly got that close-knit interaction because I had so many students in our years. I think design for us must have had like 90 a year or something.
I'd say at least that, yeah. Yeah.
That's painful to even hear.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it was the same for you, Adam, or not, but I remember in our first year, when you came into design, actually no, it wasn't, because the first year of our course, it's
that mixture one, isn't it?
It was a mixed bag, and you didn't specialize until your second year. But in the first like introductory lectures at the first year of uni, the kind of course leader he pretty much said like, look around you. He was like, more than 30% of you won't be here by like this time next year. Because I think they knew they had such a high turnover of like students, because kind of what you said before, of like, shit, I love games, I want to make games, and then the reality sets in because either they didn't know the nature of how you make games, or whatever it would be would kind of set in a bit, and they'd be like, fuck this, I'm out. I want to go do something else. So yeah, it was very, very different from a uni point of view, but college wise, I think was quite similar to that, because mine was like a BTEC over here, and that was very, like you said, very vocational. It was pretty much, there was like the TV and film, and we were like the first year of the game stuff. We were a bit of a guinea pig, and then every other course at the college was it was pretty much making like builders and people who could like, you know, make cars and shit, and we're just sat there like, we do games. There's all these like burly 16-year-olds like carrying girders through. We're like, oh yeah.
Oh man, one thing I think that I'm not sure if it was similar for you, but what the government has done with these educations, which I do agree with, is they actually like grades as long as you've passed the basics. Like if you passed, I think there are like 4 subjects you need to pass. Like you need to pass like Swedish, like English, and like super basic math, like the base subjects. After that, the grades don't count for these educations, and I think that's super like when it comes to that, the turnover rate, because we also have like the normal educations which go by grades. You know, you
Right.
might have super high performing people who perform really good in a school environment that might just not translate to that type of like game development work, and those schools definitely have like the thing you said about the speech in the beginning, like if by the end of the year like 80% of you won't be here, like I've heard that speech from those schools.
Yeah, it's really crazy that, you know, because at the end of the day, like universities, they are a business first and foremost. So like I think when they're saying that, like so front loading you, going, yeah, we know you're probably not going to be here. It's a very shell shock like moment to kind of hear, you know, as you're kind of coming into like, I'm at university, it's going to be the best 3 years of my life. Woo! And that's like the first thing that gets said to you, like, oh shit.
Yeah, I think for us, I think because obviously in my final year, I think it's split because art, animation, and design. I think 20 of us had a job lined up for graduation, and that was it. Probably in those like 150 students graduating that year.
Yeah, it's
But
it's not
we all
surprising,
made
is
it.
No.
I don't know how
We
many
all-
in my course graduated out. Well, all of them, a lot of them graduated out of like the 25 that were on the course. But I only think like I only know of like 5 of us that have a job. So in industry, at least, that uni hasn't just turned everyone jobless.
unemployable.
If you're at McDonald's, they got a job.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
interesting you're saying how, like, you know, the 2 you most of you won't be here in 2 years kind of a thing, because I think that's kind of a thing is in the games industry as well. Is a lot of people, it's quite a high percentage of people that leave the industry after like a year or so. So when you, Oliver, when you went into DICE, like you said, you went into an internship and everything. From a lot of it, we've seen that from us and a lot of guests, they found that they basically went in very hot and they got so much responsibility early on. Was that what it was like for you going into games?
Oh, I mean, extremely. It was, you know, it was kind of the perfect opportunity for like, oh, I want to do stuff hungry intern. But you know, looking back at it with my, you know, I guess more senior eyes, where I'm like, I would never put that on like an intern.
Yeah.
You know, the I think the project was a bit understaffed for it was Battlefront 2, where we were, you know, making I think 12 levels were being made at DICE Stockholm, and I think they only really had like level designers for like 2/3 of that, and then they also had game modes that nobody was working on, but there were supposed to be 3 more game modes. So of course, me and my buddy, another intern, we came from the same school at the same time. You know, we just took those 3 game modes, and you know, like I think like a third of the maps for the entire team, and it was like we worked on that, but it was amazing as an intern. But once again, in retrospect, you know, that's a lot of responsibility. That's a
Yeah.
lot of things to, you know, potentially mess up,
Yeah.
and yeah, it was also like a lot of work. So with, you know, like I enjoyed it at the time. I don't think that everyone would have enjoyed it, but I do think, you know, that was really like, you know, you got thrown the hot potato. What do you do? You know, it's
Yeah.
either you drop it or you know, you
It
juggle
is.
it.
It's proper sink or swim, and I think, you know, like what you said there about it, I think some people are going to react well to it, or some people are going to be like, "Oh my god, you know, this is too much work, too much responsibility," and they're going to melt down. And it is like it's. I can't. I'm in two minds of it. Of do I like it that, you know, that is the process, and you come in whether you're an intern, junior, or you're on like a secondment, whatever your way in is now. I don't know if I like that you are just kind of like thrown this sink or swim, do or die. Because in my head, I think when you hear junior or intern role, you go, oh, it's going to be lovely. Like, I'm going to be like having like one-to-one time with like a senior. Like, I'm going to be shadowing them, and I'm going to be learning the ins and outs of the industry. And oh, it's going to be this like amazing time for me to kind of, like still enjoy like my first time in the industry, but like have this safety net. And I know for me, I did not have that. And what you said then was like other people we spoke to and other guests. It's a very common theme. This. But I don't know how it's remedied really, because the way studios work, it's always busy, right? Like even the start of a project, it's always busy. People are always wanting to crack on and do stuff. So yeah, I'm not sure if it's good or bad. Really, it's tough.
I think one interesting thing that I've noticed is that I've actually seen, this might very much depend on the studio and person, but generally, like the longer somebody has been in the industry, the the less stressful things get. Or like if I were to compare with like through my years in the industry now, like the most intense time of that was like the first 3 months of my internship, right? Because you're picking up this, like for me it was a new engine like Frostbite. You can't access that from the outside, and trying to learn how corporations work, how you like handle that in a professional setting, and doing all of this stuff. It's a lot of juggling at once. That's quite overwhelming, and even that in itself is quite a lot, without you adding on the pressure of like, hey, here's a bunch of content, which like learn how to make it. So I do think that it's like I do think that a lot of interns are eager for this sort of thing, but I do think it's good to keep them away from it. We've started doing that at Hazelight now. That interns, we kind of sidestep them into like a smaller, disconnected piece of the game that they can work on. It doesn't matter if they completely botch it, and we can't use it, because it's like, or for example like a small mini game or something like that in It Takes Two, like work on this. If it turns out terribly, it's fine. I think the problem is when we put interns in like or just junior people in like a very vital position where like if this fails, that's going to have a knock-on effect on the next person who's going to have to crunch for their side. That sort of I don't think you should put that on like anybody who's new to the job.
No, I think that's absolutely true. And I think what you said there about the layering on of kind of pressure of it's your first job as well in the industry. So I think even in your head, because normally as well you'll be young still. You're still going to be like early 20s, like most of the time I'd say. And I think you still really want to make a good impression as well, right? So you're sat there and you do go the extra mile and you put the extra hours in. You sat there being like, I'm really good. Honestly, I'm really good. I'm class. Like I always remember like getting asked like, "Are you okay? Like, is that enough? Like, is that like too much work?" I'm just like, "No," and I'm just sat there with like a meltdown about it. Like 5 minutes,
and it's just never admit to it, right? It's like, is it too much work? And it's like, is that a failure on my part?
Are they asking that because I'm crumbling already? Like. Oh fuck me! I don't know.
I think it's such a hard thing though, especially when you're so junior and you get asked that. You think immediately you're like, well, this is them testing me, kind of thing. When in actuality, I feel like most people are sincere and being like, no, if this is too much, I want you to tell us. But a lot of juniors, because they've got that passion and drive, just don't do it. Which is, if so, it's take the help when you can get it. If you've got too much on your plate, please tell the senior members because they want to help you.
Exactly, and it's that thing where like when you've been in the industry a while, like if somebody like, oh, here's a level or here's a mechanic and this is the amount of time. If I don't think that's a reasonable amount of time, I'm gonna put my feet on the desk and be like, nah, this ain't happening. We gotta talk about this,
Exactly.
But like you don't have the confidence to even trust your ability to estimate when you're junior, right? Where it's like,
no,
I guess this is fine. Well, actually, a part of the job is saying like no, or compromising, finding a way to like make it work, right?
Yeah, big time.
Because the more you do that, then sorry, Jack, go on.
Go on, fine.
I say the more designers do that, not just designers, but anyone who comes into the industry, the more designers are able to push back and go, look, this isn't reasonable for me to do. It just creates better pipelines overall because we have better estimates and therefore we make better games. So it's like it's one of those that you just got to start doing it and then we'll be much better.
Yeah, big time. Cool. So I guess we'll jump a little bit more. I realize we've kind of pushed on a bit of a tangent there. So obviously you've kind of went to DICE as an internship. So you shipped Battlefront 2 and then shifted on to Battlefield 5. So primarily on Battlefront 2 you were doing multiplayer, like map design mostly, right?
And then map design and game modes,
game modes, and then you shifted onto Battlefield 5 and you were doing more single player content, correct?
Yeah, that's right. The Lost Tiger in that one.
Yeah. So would you say that then, jumping further into your career then, so you worked on single player and multiplayer with a game like It Takes Two, which is two players cooperative in nature, do you think that your experience of seeing both sides of the level design coin, so to speak, that kind of like prepped you quite well to make something co-op based? Or would you say it's inherently more single player the way you treat it, or?
It's very interesting actually. It's really in its own. I think if I were to have gone on to like a game like Destiny, right, where
Right.
it is either single player or co-op, it doesn't really matter. I think then those experience would have translated really well, and I would have been able to do that, like with no friction. But it's actually very, very interesting with the type of co-op we did, which is this is co-op. There is no like maybe or another person or like this is the way it's gonna work, which also allows us to do some very cool things. But inherently, it's very much like designing a single player game. You do the pacing, or like that's the way we work. We look at the pacing, puzzles, combat traversal, all of that stuff. How we order those, where the story beats are gonna land. But then you just have this awful layer, like from it's cool, but it's also like a complicated layer of like there's another person here. You want to do that fake cool thing they did in Uncharted with the camera. Oh wait, there's another person. I can't teleport. You just at every turn you're like, oh shit, this has to be like in the foundation of what you're thinking of has to kind of be there, right? You can't. Same with like, if you have like, wouldn't it be cool if two people are riding a rocket, or one person is riding a rocket, and they're like, there's another person. What is the other person doing? That sort of layering. But I like technically, I was prepared. I'd say like both level design and scripting skills, etc. But the sidestep into just kind of doing single player kind of Uncharted cinematic stuff, but with two players was quite a step actually.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's class.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, you think that they would like you said, you think they would move closer together, but they don't really. I mean, I know we had a lot of on Man of Medan, we had a lot of that multiplayer stuff that was like, oh, wait a minute, there's another player.
It's always the thing. I remember working on Star Wars. I remember I had a literal post-it note, and it just said, remember, there's co-op. Every single time. Every single time there was on about something like, oh, we should do that. That'd be class. It's like, what is player 2 going to be doing though? And it's one of those things like when you aren't like, I think if you were like sharing like a desk with someone when there's another controller there all the time, maybe you'd be more aware of it. But when you just sat in your own little like channel, you're doing stuff like, shit, there's two players here. How are we going to get that working?
Is that what you're saying we should do, Jack? We should have co-op development where you share one.
I'm definitely not suggesting that. And what I'm saying is post-it notes save my life more than I can ever tell you. It's like that scene in Hot Fuzz when he gets his book out. He's about it saves his life more than a gun. Post-it notes.
It just says remember player 2 infinitely
legit
on the notepad.
It's very interesting. It's a challenge, but it's definitely a fun challenge. Like when you get it to work, right? It's very rewarding where you're like, okay, not only sure you've accounted for the co-op player, but not only is this this is something that's unique to the co-op one. Like you can't do this, or like Uncharted can't do this, or other games, because we're actually using that instead of using it as a crutch. Like, oh, we're gonna do like the other games, but badly. We're twisting that into now we're doing something that those
That's
games just
only
can't do. Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned on when you obviously on with Mark from Game Makers Toolkit, and you had like 3 types of co-op that I think internally you guys used. I'm struggling to remember what they were now, but they sounded like they were like kind of 3 nice ways of separating that experience, like through those those
Yeah.
different channels.
So
I'm struggling to remember what they were.
we had parallel co-op, which is what we refer to. That's sort of the Destiny style game where like it's actually like single player, but it's kind of parallel, right? Where you're playing with each other. Like that's an oversimplification, but kind of where you like any player could drop out at any moment. You're kind of playing in the same space. That, for example, the platforming in It Takes Two is that where you're both just jumping around. It's not like you're super connected. Or like when you're flying around or something. That's when you're individual but in the same space. And then you have what we call step-by-step co-op, which is this sort of let's see. So it's basically kind of from what's happening. It's kind of like I'll use my mechanic to get you over here, and then while you're over there, now you're going to have to help me. But it's kind of this step by step where both players are not really super active at the same time. Where, I'll weigh something down, you'll jump on it, and then you'll shoot something so that I can go, that sort of back and forth. And the third one, which like is probably the most intense type of co-op, is just a truly like shared experience, which we call parallel co-op. This will be like you're both piloting a plane, or like the glider is a great example in It Takes Two, where one player where you share like a kind of a bar that you move back and forth on, and this will tilt the angle of the plane, and that will like affect which way you're steering, which means that communication communication is at a all-time high. From like parallel co-op, communication is not super important. Like it might be from like a it's super hard, we need coordinates sort of thing, but generally it's not required for parallel co-op. Then you have step by step, you're kind of like in this spurts of communication. Okay, now you do this. Oh, now you help me over here. And then you have the parallel co-op, which is the one where you just scream at each other like left, no, right, no. Where it all breaks down, right?
Yeah.
There were a lot of arguments that we had when we were playing on those ones with the gliders. I think my relationship is strained from that. But anyway.
I've played through it twice to play both characters and with different people. And it's amazing to hear the difference between different people that you're playing with. Like, especially like I played with someone on like the couch and then with someone online, and how that experience is still exactly the same. I've always been like a big person for couch co-op, because that was like me growing up was just playing couch co-op games with my brother, even if they were just single player games. So I thought it was amazing to see that come out again in like the way that It Takes Two does. With like you were saying, with the different versions of co-op, I found that with the way that those levels progressed, I thought they were quite clean in where they progressed. But normally you had like a open world bit to go and explore and look at all the cool environments and mini games that you can find, and then normally there was some kind of like traversal puzzle bit, story, action set piece, and then boss. Was that something that you had like a design around? We've got to fit this bit of story and this many puzzles, or was it all just sort of freeform to fit the level design that you had?
I wish I could say that we planned. Like I think it turned out well, and I wouldn't say it was by accident either. I think that we corrected the stuff that felt bad, right? But we were very freeform in the way we worked, which meant that we were just doing prototypes, and and then at some point we started assembling it to a level. And I think we just had our own kind of internal, like, oh, does this feel good? Like, oh, would that feel good here? I think at some points, you might have had like intensity for too long or puzzle for too long. There are a few moments that I think could have been better for it. But actually, a lot of it was just by feel, right? I think one of the Hazelight strengths is that we're a very reactive studio compared to other studios. We're like not at all planners, I'd say. Like you look at our documentation and be like, is this a game project? And like, no, this is It Takes Two. And you'd be like, what, really? And that's sort of the way we worked. But instead, like, after each UXR or a big playtest, like we had milestones where we playtest, we just get a bunch of notes, what works, what doesn't, and we just correct and change stuff. And I think there are two ways to kind of work, and of course you can work in the in between way. One is a bottom up, where you start with a design document and like you plan everything down, and then you have the way which we worked here, which was just like we started with the prototypes and just built our way up to a game, kind of, and then looked at the high level from that, which is I think surprisingly uncommon in the games industry. It's definitely like chaotic in its sense, but it was also chaotic game, so it was kind of the perfect fit, right?
That's it, isn't it? Yeah, I think you mentioned on your video with Mark as well. Like, I think you mentioned the action blocks GDC talk from Titanfall 2. And it feels like there's a lot of like parallels almost with that. Like, it felt like from what you just said there and what I garnered from your video and from the GDC talk from Titanfall, it did feel like it was a lot of, right, let's just go away, make a little idea, see if it works, come back, like, what do you think of that? And I think that way, like you said, if it fits the type of experience you're making, when Titanfall 2 is this crazy, the players are pilot in a controller of a giant mech, it should be crazy and it should be wacky. But I guess if you're making something more, kind of grounded in that maybe the kind of other process would be more at home with that. But yeah, I guess it'd be interesting to find a process in between those binaries. I don't know if that's possible at all, but
yeah, we're trying that right now. Actually, of course, I can't say what we're working on, but we kind of, we took a step back now, and we're like, okay, how do we improve on what we made? And I think the biggest flaws kind of came from the top down. There was no top down look at the game before. Or levels, like even comparing, like if we had similar segments, we couldn't do that because we hadn't even thought of the segments by the time you'd compare them. So we're doing an in-between now with like a light planning structure in Miro, where we're doing like a level overview kind of thing. And
cool.
Miro is great, by the way. Like yeah, it's so good. But yeah, we're doing like a level overview, but still very light, very high level, and then combining that with these prototypes, because I still think, like in a game like Last of Us, you could still do those action blocks. Like, for example, it's just the tone of them. Like, for example, the moment when you get strung up in the foot and like get upside down, like that's an excellent thing that could come out of this sort of thing, where you're like, oh yeah, shit, like that's excellent. And like, what else can we do? What can we do when we're on like a skyscraper? Could the skyscraper collapse? What would that look like? Just these kind of short, interesting ideas that could then meld into the narrative. I think that was also the part that was kind of difficult. That we made all of these prototypes, and we're a very narrative studio as well, but the amount and the lack of planning combining with the narrative, it was very difficult at points where it's like, what are we doing? We're doing Street Fighter on a plane. How does that fit into the story? I don't know.
Single-handedly, I don't think my jaw was like attached for about half an hour after that. I remember me and Adam were playing it, and I was actually screaming at him, saying like, "I'm fighting a squirrel on a bloody plane. This is the best thing I've ever played." Like, it just came out of nowhere as well. And that's the one thing I think anyone who's played it has said. Like, it consistently just surprised me, like across every board. Like, oh my god, like it's kept bringing ideas like every hour. Do you know what I mean? It was like, oh my god, it's a complete different game. It's such a refreshing experience, like from start to finish.
It surprised us too.
I think that game as well as like in a weird way was even cooler to play being in game development as well, because you'd go to like a whole other section, then you'd be like, "I got another freaking mechanic here. What is going on?"
Yeah.
One thing I think we all agree with, I think that the movement in that game is like really good. It just feels really good to just run around and jump around, even if that was just the whole sandbox of the game. And you're saying that you did a lot of prototypes early on. Was the movement planned out part of that, or did you have to change some of your puzzles because of you added the dash and everything into it afterwards?
Oh man, you touched on a sore spot. Here we go.
Oh no!
I'm just digging all the stuff out now.
No, but it's actually a great question. So the movement was done mainly by Tom Clamp and Jacob Lundgren, who were two designers. So we're kind of unspecific in terms of. I hear sirens.
Oh.
But,
they're coming for you.
They're coming for
exactly. I gotta go. Like we kind of have a very loose structure where we're all kind of designers, and it's kind of like basically who wants this hat. Like we're doing a life or like a health system. Who wants to do it? And these are the two designers that mainly worked on movement. And the thing is, for the longest time. The movement, we didn't have double jump and we didn't have dash. We started with just like we want our set pieces or like mechanics to carry this game. And, right. We also started with kind of like a question everything sort of attitude where we're like, okay, like every platformer has done a double jump. Let's not do a double jump and see if it works. And like, we had that for a long time, and then we added the dash, and we're like, "Oh, this is kind of good. I just wish I could control it like a second jump, So eventually, we added the jump in. The dash was still good because it was very useful in other situations like combat, and it added to the versatility of the set. And I think that the question everything attitude is a big part of why this game. Turned out so special for many reasons, but in this case, like, no, there is a very good reason double jumps are there. Like, I think one of the biggest reasons that people might not realize, like, from the UXRs and playtest, is that double jump is very much an accessibility thing, where bad players, controlling that one jump and not being able to course correct. They die, like, I would say 80% more. It was just like 80% more, like 200% more. It was like a staggering increase. And then we added the double jump, and that just like dropped because they could course correct or miss and then jump up again. That helped them so much. And it also felt really good. And there was another big discussion we had, which was like, how good should the movement feel? Because it is a co-op game, but the movement is, that's a single player mechanic, kind of, it's separate. And it was actually a big fight where I think the thing that we really kind of bickered about was how fast we called it the speed to player pixel ratio, where how fast would the other co-op partner turn into a pixel on your screen.
Right.
Because it was this, you're playing together, but if you're having these super cool fast moves and you just disappear from the other player, that's not nice. It doesn't feel co-op anymore. So it was one of the challenges. I think we handled it fairly well. It was a lot of back and forth, but it ended on a good note, and with a lot of puzzle rebuilding, which was the original question. Like, distances, like, oh, well, this gap is gotta be doubled, and then you like push it, and then like, oh, your puzzle now clips into the next puzzle, so then we're gonna have to move this, and it continues, and you're pulling your hair out, and but I think
just going over to art, like, I'm sorry. Everything has to move.
Yeah. We're going to have to move all of this. I'm really, really sorry.
I mean, that was essentially it. And they're like, okay, but it's fine. It's only one thing. Yeah. they're all interconnected, so everything actually,
That's a really good thing, actually. It's kind of segues into something I've been wanting to ask, and we've been trying to ask all our guests this because I think what we were saying before about when you're in the industry, you are a bit clueless at what industry life is like, I guess. So when it comes to things like going to art, for example, and being like, that amazing level you've just done for me, you've taken my ugly little grey area, you've made it beautiful. We need to change that, and this is X, Y, and Z reasons why. Or if you need to go to code and you need to have all these extra things you never wanted to be exposed, you need all this extra functionality added into something. Like, have you got any tips? Might be a bit of a cheesy word, or like just any kind of insight of how to kind of build and ensure that you have like a really good working relationship when you're working with different departments, and because at the end of the day you're all making like the kind of example I always say is you're all making this same Frankenstein's monster, right? And have you got any kind of interesting insight of how to maintain good working relationships when you're kind of working with different departments?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely the thing that you touched upon is one of the most important, I think, which is that, our artists, and that goes for everyone, like sound designers, etc. They're not outsourcing that you just throw a bunch of changes on. I think it's very important that, they're involved in the level and can understand why these changes are happening, that they can see on the playtest, this ledge, people are getting stuck there or whatever, then it's way easier for them to not only do the change but also agree and internally from them, like, yeah, no, we gotta fix that. I think that's a very important thing, that like involving the departments, especially for like the those painful moments where you're like, oh no, we're gonna have to change this.
Yeah.
I think it's way easier if they understand what's happening, instead of just like seeing the level as their kind of canvas, and they've painted a painting, and now I'm here ruining it.
Yeah, cutting it up.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think it's well that because they're so specialized in all of their stuff and we're specialized in our thing, when you go through and you talk to different disciplines and you're all making the same the same product, like you said, Jack, they're going to be able to come up with ideas that you never, or problems, and fixing problems that you never would have been able to come up with. I've had it before. You go up and you discuss things like, oh, I need to change it like this, and I'm like, well, we could just do it this way. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's great. Why don't we just do that? Because they're going to have that extra knowledge that you're not going to have. So.
Definitely, and I think that's a great point, where I always say like both design and level design, it's kind of the bridge for all departments, right? Where like everything is gonna get shoved into the level eventually, right? And we're kind of the highway for that, but that also means we're the highway for like information, as you said. Like they might be specialized in architecture, and then you saying I want to destroy this pillar or whatever, and they might say, oh, but have you thought of this and this? And you're like, oh, I don't know architecture, but that's a great point. So we'll do that instead.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think with anything like that, I think design for the longest time, I think, and whether it's from people maybe getting the wrong end of the stick from certain like making of documentaries, or maybe just some kind of I think if for me anyway, growing up, I was always like looking at Kojima, like he was this guy who had like all the ideas, and I think in a certain way it's like led to a slight air of like designers being like the ideas people, and I like don't like that at all. I think it's really wrong. I think like we are, but at the end of the day, like we should be like the problem solvers, and we should be like justifying things why they need to be like that. And I think, like you said, it kind of, if you involve the team with stuff, and what you said there, Matt, as well, sometimes you'll get the solution, or at least something that leads you to a solution of someone saying something, because you were too busy, galaxy braining it over something, and they'll suggest something. And I think the more you can like culture this environment that everyone's opinion, like you will hear it. But at the end of the day, the book's like stops with design, right? So as long as you can hear everything, and then you have time to go away and like mull over it, and then come back with a solution for it, I tend to think that that's where a designer's role tends to be, rather than just having this pressure of being this like, I think I used the phrase in our first podcast we did when I was saying like this like these like, arbiters of knowledge and truth and everything gamey, and it's like no, like listen to someone who isn't even thinking it as a game for a second. It's just an idea like, oh, that really works for me. Yeah.
I think somebody wise said, I can't remember who, but they said that a designer's job mainly is to identify problems and not come up with ideas to solve them, but pick the right idea. Like pick the right idea to solve the problems. And I guess that goes all the way to even coming up with game ideas. What does this game idea solve? Like all the way back there to the very specific, like, oh, people are looking the wrong way while you're walking this way. Like you don't have to be the know it all who's going to have the actually perfect solution, but like you should talk to your team, think about it, see what works, and then like come to the best solution. And that involves a lot of things. The best solution that might work for a gameplay perspective might not work from a time perspective. It's a lot of factors for that.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. Yeah, definitely.
I couldn't agree more with that one. I think one thing that's interesting as well is how those sort of design roles can differ from different studios. So you yourself has been at both Hazelight and DICE, for example, and just wondering what is the day-to-day like in comparison to these two? I know you said that at Hazelight it's very much from top down, but is that similar to DICE, or is it a bit different there? What's kind of the day-to-day like on in design?
Yeah, it's very different actually. I'd say so. At DICE, kind of, you had this whole schedule, right? You basically, in a lot of ways, you kind of knew every step up until release, right? You had this plan, very detailed, with 24 milestones where you'd be like, oh yeah, we're supposed to be here by this week. You could very much tell that, and you were kind of working your way there. That's not to say that there wasn't a lot of creativity. It's just, this is a machine that works, that's very much on schedule, and it's thousands of people being involved in making sure that this ships on time. It has to be like that. And I think that the amount of communication that you had to do in like a studio like that, where not only is it DICE, but you're working with DICE LA and you're working with Criterion on something, and there are just so many studios involved in that. And so communication was a big part of that. Like I would say the amount of mails I had to read. I'd start every morning with reading mails. I don't do that at Hazelight, for example. Like, then I just sit and basically focus on my level, which is kind of similar on between Hazelight and DICE. The question is maybe how big that level is and how much influence I had over it. Where you'd have like narrative directors, and these are different ways of working. I'm not saying that one's better than the other. Like if you have a super good narrative director that can kind of pierce the heart with their stories, that's a very different way. But at Hazelight, we're a lot smaller in terms of both size and how many work on each level. We're like 1-2 designers on a level, and 1-2 artists on a level as well. And then Joseph, the creative director, he's very much like a high level. We're going this way, pointing the general direction, but everything else is kind of up to you, right? We're like, what do I want all the set pieces to be? What kind of gameplay? What mechanics do I want? That sort of stuff is very much up to you. While that's probably like at DICE comparatively, that would probably require like at least 20 people to decide and verify.
I think that's one of the things
that's done.
I think that's one of the things that people, maybe people who are getting into the industry as well, is that like not every game studio is the same. Just like not every role that you have at game studios are the same. Like you say, these are two completely different ways of working. It's not necessarily one is better than the other. It's just whatever works for that team and that studio.
Yeah,
exactly.
Which is one of the most exciting things about being in the industry.
Yeah, so because you can go from doing like a level design role at X studio, and you might all you literally might be doing, like, I know in my experience at times when I worked at TT, like, they internally call level designers level directors, and for that you'd do the entire level, like you do the LDD, you do the block out, but you'd essentially act as like the main like stakeholder of that, and you'd just be driving it, and content would come in, you'd get bits, put it where it needs to be now and then, but you'd mainly would just be getting it, going through, reviewing it, going again. But then sometimes some studios, you're like the main person who's getting everything and putting it all in yourself, and like you just said, Oliver, as well, like if it's just a couple of on you on a level as big as some of the ones in It Takes Two, which, I think some of them are upwards of an hour sometimes, I think. That would never work with just one designer kind of waiting for content to come in so we can just kind of direct stuff properly. So.
Exactly, and I think a lot of people have this kind of, especially the ones who hasn't worked in games, have maybe this skewed idea of what AAA versus indie versus mid-sized is, where they're like, it's gonna be this way to work in AAA, and I'm gonna be more creative in indie. Now that's not necessarily the case for me. That has been the case, but I know some indie studios that they have like very much a creative director who's like very much this is the way it's supposed to be. You might be less creative than you'd ever be at a AAA studio. It really depends on the company and how they work, and I don't think that I see some people refer to AAA as like, a mindless machine, and I'm like, I've seen indie studios that are like that. I've also seen AAA studios which are very creative, like like for example Respawn. I know their workflow is like, no, the individual designer has very like a huge effect on what's going to be in the game. That's so it's all about the company and how they work, and I think that people should clear those assumptions from their mind, and actually, like, if they're curious about a company, they should ask people who are there. Like, I mean, what do? You shouldn't assume that it's AAA. It's this, like,
Uh-huh.
the only thing that the only thing that I've found inferable between them is that in AAA usually you have to do a lot more communication because there are more people. But that's kind of the only thing that I've found to be true. Everything else I've been like, oh, you work like that. That's crazy,
That is a really, really good point, and it's something. Do you know what you said there about the kind of indie stuff? Something I've never even thought about too much until you said it. Like, there's normally people equate smaller team, smaller budget and everything to, all right, more responsibility, more creative freedom and stuff. But like, I think if you are working with someone who is, like you said, that big kind of creative visionary, this is how it's happening, you might end up in a bit of a scenario where you are like, oh yeah, I'm not doing all that much off my own back. I am just, kind of, I'm a spoke on the wheel, so to speak.
And then a lot of those, because of how fluid games are in the way that you make them, and because, in my mind, it is an art, right? So art is subjective, and then each way you get to a final goal is very different. So we're talking about, more creativity or less creativity or more to someone else's goal. All of these ways work in their own ways. So it's totally dependent on how the team itself is working together and the company's own ethos about all of this stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, it's definitely cool to see how we can have an industry where everything is just completely different everywhere.
Yeah, everyone's inventing the wheel, kind of. Does this work?
So I was just going to ask, since you've worked on a numerous few projects over the years, do you have a moment in one of them games it's your proudest, your favorite moment?
Oh, that's a great question. I think let's see. I think actually the ending of Snow Globe, the Snow Globe level in It Takes Two, where we essentially you have two magnets, right? And throughout the game you've been using them, or throughout this level you've been using them to interact with objects, but you haven't been able to interact with each other. And there is a whole allegory about this, the magnets being it's about attraction. This whole level, attraction to each other. It's two people falling out of love, and at the end of this level, the magnets regain their ability to attract to each other. So from that point onward, you could magnet each other and actually slam into each other and ride on the other person's back. And there were some really interesting puzzles and emotional moments that came from that. Of course, how emotional it is when you're making co-op games, how emotional something feels, you're giving up even more control than you do in a single player game. In a single player game, you can very much force that, but depending on what mood the players are in, they're not going to feel that because they might be giggling at Cody's butt. That's and that's totally fine. It's just something I realized, but I think that moment really worked well from a evolution of the mechanic, just pushing, combining those mechanics with the narrative, and ending on that note. Especially so as it was about to be cut because we didn't have time for it, and then we it's no, we need to do this, and then I made a prototype level where I'm look how cool this is, and then they were okay, we'll do that, and we ended up doing that instead of a snow globe boss fight, which was originally planned.
That's really amazing though, that that you said you had those moments of oh god, I can see it, I can see the guillotine coming down on this level, shit, we need to fucking stop this, we're all for this, and you all gathered around and just put the work in, and it shows for itself come on, you can't cut it now, look how good it is. That's a really cool game dev story, because I think in my experience that is quite hard to fight against. Once something's been said, it's getting cut. It's getting cut. It's very hard to turn back the clock almost on that stuff. So that's a very positive little game dev story. It's kind of filled my heart up. Yeah, I like that.
I mean, as someone who's played that game a lot, I can tell you that it did work really well. And also the fact that, now you mention it, I didn't think about it, that it doesn't have the boss fight how the other ones do.
No.
You do that. You do that scaling up the mountain with the attraction and stuff. That works so well just as part of a tie into the story where they get to. And then obviously, because it's paced of them doing the different individual stuff after that they work so well with how that paces into that.
And it pretty much ends with it's pretty much a Naughty Dog-esque set piece, which is the most coolest slope set piece I've ever done. And then it's somehow still, even though it's about connection, like you just said, we were still playing it I'm going to beat you though. I'm going to beat you. How a game can jump from those two tones, and I was still 100% locked in for it. That's what I mean, man. I'm scared that this podcast is going on because it's just going to be us gushing over the game. But credit's due. Do you know what I mean? It is as celebrated as it is for a reason.
Quick, find something negative to talk about.
If we're gushing, I'm saying if we're gushing, we've got to talk about Dr. Hakim.
Oh yes. I think Adam was close to wetting his knickers every time he was on screen. I remember those times when you sat there, and there's certain games when it gets to a cutscene, and I'm going to offend every narrative designer in the world. I apologise, but there's certain cutscenes when you're just right, okay, I can chill now. It's whatever. Every time he was on screen, I was just sat eagerly waiting, come on, where is he? And he just emerged, yes!
Yes. Oh my god. So Hakim, maybe you figured it out, or maybe you haven't. That's Joseph. That's his real life persona just into the game. It's really funny that so another voice actor did the voice in the final, but we had Joseph for the longest time as both the audio and the mocap.
Oh my
Hakim is actually mocap. I can't tell you how many hip thrusts have been painfully reduced by the animators, because it's just Joseph. And if you like Hakim, you like Joseph. That's
honestly,
how close are we? I'm saying, how close are we to get tattoos, Jack?
Oh, we were very close to getting a Dr. Hakeem tattoo. We're very close. It's just to celebrate our time playing it. Like, amazing. Well, I don't want to be. I know we were kind of discussing about maybe we should go on longer, but I'm going to make the call. I don't think we're going to top that anecdote. I think that has made my year pretty much. So I guess we should probably kind of wrap up. But Oliver, this has been amazing. It's been great chatting to you. It's been great seeing what kind of your journey into design. Obviously, little bits of It Takes Two and all these really cool development bits. So before we leave us, is there anything you want to plug, like your Twitter or anything like that? Like, feel free, get that done.
No, it's fine.
All good.
That's easy. That's fine. Done. Yeah.
Nicely done. Cool. Well, thanks. Yeah, thanks again, everyone. This has been great. I think this might be a little bit biased, maybe my favorite episode so far.
I'm pretty
this has been great.
every time.
Yeah. We have been Rules of Play, and we will catch you all in the next one. Thanks very much, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
See you later.
Bye-bye.